All worlds begin with Demon Slayer. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 951 Soul Interrogation. Afterwards, Kirishima Talca took the lead in explaining Bai Yu and told everyone what she knew from Bai Yu. Although everyone heard about this situation for the first time, they still attributed it to Mrs. Ryoko's obsession, admitting that this was a choice made by Mrs. Ryoko to Bai Yu to protect Hinami for her. After hearing everyone's speculation, Hinami was not disappointed, but happy for it. Hinami also felt that her mother was living and protecting herself in another way. Brother Bai Yu, then don't let your mother down. You must protect me well. Hinami smiled and told Bai Yu. Bai Yu nodded and promised, brother, I will definitely protect Hinami. Seeing that Hinami had walked out of that shadow, everyone couldn't be happy in their hearts, but fell into a very difficult situation. After all, the death of Fugashima Sato has become an unchangeable fact, and this fact cannot be concealed unless Hinami suddenly loses his memory. By the way, where's dad? Hinami remembered her father at this time. Then, she looked around and found that her father was not in the room. Everyone looked at the store manager, Yoshimura Kausen, who knew that he had to tell Hinami the news. Yoshimura Kausen looked at Hinami and called out, then said, your father was executed by Hakushiru last night. Hinami didn't react at first, but after 2 or 3 seconds, her happy expression suddenly froze, and Yoshimura Kausen's words kept echoing in her mind. Dad was also killed by Hakushiru? Hinami looked at Yoshimura Kausen and murmured back. At this time, Kirishima Talca knelt in front of Hinami, then put her hands on Hinami's shoulders and comforted her. It's okay, Hinami. You still have everyone. Everyone here is your family. As she said that, Kirishima Talca didn't know if she felt the same way, but she couldn't help but shed tears, and then hugged Hinami tightly. Your father was very worried about you, so he went with us to the place you said to find you last night. If your father wasn't there, your brother wouldn't be able to find you, so it was your father who saved you. When we went to the sewer to find you, there were 2 white cranes guarding the entrance. In order to find you, as soon as possible, I asked your father and brother Kaneki to stay and hold back the 2 white cranes. Your father lost his life in the process. Bai Yu also told Hinami about what happened last night. The state of Bai Yu and Kirishima Talca was like a couple comforting an orphan. Hearing this, Hinami looked at Kaneki-ken, then pointed at Kaneki-ken with her finger, and asked in a somewhat cold tone, then why wasn't he killed? Isn't he a weak chicken? Then why did you follow? Why is he alive and well? If he was able to deal with the white cranes, why did he ignore his mother and not save her? Why? Each of these whys from Hinami hit Kaneki-ken's heart and soul, making Kaneki-ken completely unable to respond, and even making Kaneki-ken feel guilty. Seeing Hinami staring at him, Kaneki-ken didn't dare to look her in the eye. He lowered his head to avoid Hinami's gaze. Kaneki-ken even had the urge to escape from the room. Chapter 952 Apology. Hinami's questions made Kaneki-ken completely unable to find words to respond, because the fundamental reason why Kaneki-ken did not rescue Mrs. Ryoko was that he was cowardly and not confident in his own strength, and secondly, he did not want to take action against humans. And this time, the reason why Kaneki-ken went to rescue Hinami together was actually because he was worried about Hinami and did not want Hinami to lose the motivation to live because of her mother's affairs, because Kaneki-ken always believed that the death of Mrs. Ryoko had something to do with him. But this time, Kaneki-ken originally wanted to make up for his previous mistakes, but he did not expect that the previous mistakes were not made up, but he witnessed another relative of Hinami die in front of him again. Hina, you have to know that the death of your mother and your father has nothing to do with Kaneki. No one wants to see their relatives leave. Yoshimura Kausen stood on Kaneki's side and said for Kaneki. This is not Yoshimura Kausen defending Kaneki-ken, but stating a fact and correcting Hinami's thoughts. If you blame others for everything, it is a very shameless behavior. Kaneki-ken failed to protect the safety of those around him, which can only mean that he is not capable enough. After all, you can't force a weak person to save the world. That's impossible. Even if Kaneki-ken has certain abilities, it is impossible to guarantee that no accidents will happen. So in Yoshimura Kousen's opinion, there is nothing to blame Kaneki-ken for this kind of thing. The attitudes of other people are the same as Yoshimura Kousen. After all, they are not children, and they understand the right and wrong, and cause and effect of things. Hina, the manager is right. Go and apologize to Kaneki brother. Bai Yu looked at Hinami and asked Hinami and Kaneki-ken to apologize. Hinami was reluctant at first, but Bai Yu's attitude was very tough, so Hinami obediently listened to Bai Yu's words, then bowed 90 degrees to Kaneki-ken and apologized. I'm sorry Kaneki-ken brother. I shouldn't blame you, these things have nothing to do with you. Don't take it to heart. No, no, no. Hinami, I should apologize. If I were a little more powerful, these things wouldn't have happened. Kaneki-ken did not let go of everything because of Hinami's apology. Hina, I hope you can put down your hatred for now, otherwise your nonsense will bring danger and trouble to more people. Do you remember my words? Yoshimura Kousen reminded Hinami again at this time, and this reminder actually also has a hint of warning, meaning that Hinami should not behave nonsense again. After speaking, Yoshimura Kousen looked at Kirishima Tauka again, as if to tell her that these words were also said to her. Hina, your grandfather Yoshimura is right. Hatred can only bring danger. This danger will not only affect yourself, but also the people around you. Don't think that you can do whatever you want, just because your brother Bai Yu is so powerful. Shikata Rinchi also stood up and echoed. The next sentence of Shikata Rinchi told Hinami directly that Bai Yu was not omnipotent. Otherwise, he and Yoshimura Ganshin could have ruled the world long ago. I know. I won't do anything stupid again. Hinami nodded and promised. This time, Hinami knew very well that, although she avenged her mother, she lost her father's life. As Bai Yu said, if her father was really not there, the person who died would probably be Hinami herself. Chapter 953 Sparks. Hinami did not expect her father's death, which made her very regretful. To some extent, it was Hinami herself who killed her father, and it was also Hinami herself who killed her mother. Hinami was very clear about this. If she could choose again, Hinami would definitely not suggest going to the bookstore to buy books. If she could choose again, Hinami would definitely not plan this revenge. It can be said that God taught Hinami a big lesson in this revenge. If she continues to commit suicide, it is estimated that she will be the next to die, and no one can save her. After that, the group took Hinami to see her father for the last time. Hinami knelt in front of Fugachi Masato's body and cried for a long time. After seeing Hinami vent her emotions, Yoshimura Kousen said to Hinami, Hina, we plan to take your father to the suburbs for cremation. You have no objection, right? No. Hinami replied, wiping her tears. This time, after Hinami finished crying, she felt much better. Compared with the death of her mother, this time, Hinami seemed to be more relieved. Unlike the last time, it became a heavy yoke that made Hinami very uncomfortable and resentful. Perhaps this time, Masato Fugachi did not die in front of Hinami, or the death of Masato Fugachi was not horrifying. Compared with Mrs. Ryoko, Masato Fugachi died much more peacefully. At least the body was intact and brought back. In short, after Hinami vented her emotions, she had accepted everything that happened. After getting Hinami's consent, Renji Shiaka and Enji Furuma put Masato Fugachi into a sleeping bag, and then moved it to the trunk of the car. Then, Renji Shiaka, Kozumiya Shimura, Shiraha, Tauka Kirishima and Hinami sat in the same car. This car belonged to Renji Shiaka, who was the driver, and the store manager sat in the co-pilot. Shiraha, Tauka Kirishima and Hinami sat in the back seat. Kaneki-ken, Nishiokin, Furuma Renji and Ira Mizuan got into Furuma Renji's car. Furuma Renji was the driver, Ira Mizuan was sitting on the front passenger seat, and Nishiokin and Kaneki-ken were sitting in the back seat. After experiencing what happened to Hinami, Nishiokin also felt the loving side of the Gudan family, and also made him feel the warmth of home. Although he was going to handle a funeral, Nishiokin couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. Seeing that Kaneki-ken looked worried, Nishiokin comforted Kaneki-ken. Nishiokin now knew that Kaneki-ken was an extremely kind person, but such people were often extremely weak in their hearts, and were the most vulnerable. If it weren't for Gudan, Kaneki-ken really didn't know what he would become. I saw Nishio Kinshi stretched out his hand and patted Kaneki Ken's shoulder, and then said, Kaneki, what Hinami's sister said at that time was just angry words. You must not take it seriously. She has never really blamed you. Hinami is also a kind girl in her heart. You know this too. Yes. Kaneki brother. There is no need to blame yourself. If you want to blame you should blame those CCG investigators. They are the culprits. Iramizuan also turned around and started psychological counseling for Kaneki Ken, who was sitting in the back row. Then, Furuma Rena also joined the team to comfort Kaneki Ken. Compared with a more dull atmosphere on Bai Yu's side, Kaneki Ken's side was much more lively. Chapter 954 Crematorium. After about an hour's drive, all the staff of Gudang arrived at a crematorium in the suburbs, where Fugachima Sato was cremated. According to Shifen Rinshi, the managers and employees of this crematorium are all gals, and the managers of the crematorium know the store manager Yoshimura Kausen. Sometimes when Gudang is short of food, he will come here to seek help, and if the crematorium is also short of supplies, he will also seek help from Gudang. After all, they are cremating humans, so only ashes are left, so the gal crematorium here will first remove the internal organs of the body and then cremate it. After all, the bodies sent are not too fresh, but they can still be the source of their survival. The scale of the crematorium is not large. After all, a big tree attracts the wind, so in fact, not many families choose to come for cremation. Sometimes it is normal for no business to come for a week or even half a month, so this crematorium, plus the manager, has only 4 gals to maintain the operation of the crematorium. Although the identity of a cremator can allow the gals who stay here to live well and do not have to bear the burden of killing innocent lives, this is ultimately a choice of survival, and not all gals are willing to live so humbly. Bai Yu and Shifen Rinshi have been to this crematorium twice, once to ask for emergency supplies, and once to deliver emergency supplies here. The car soon drove into the crematorium. The manager of the crematorium was a fat middle-aged man named Kamida Ken, who looked amiable. As soon as everyone got off the car, Kamida Ken greeted everyone warmly. Although Kamida Ken knew that the antique people were here to handle the funeral, he and Yoshimura Kausen had not seen each other for a long time, so he naturally had to entertain them. Brother Yoshimura, it's been a long time. Kamida Ken first took the initiative to give Yoshimura Kausen a hug. Although you are here to handle the funeral, it is a happy thing for me that all the staff of Antiques can come to me. Everyone, follow me, and let my men do the cremation of Mr. Fukao. Then Ken Kamida planned to take everyone into the house to entertain them. Ken Kamida probably saw too many funerals and was numb, so he did not feel any sadness at this time. Well, can I participate in Dad's cremation and accompany Dad to the last part of the journey? I want to accompany him for the last time. At this time, Hinami suddenly asked. Yoshimura Kausen did not speak. After all, the crematorium belonged to Ken Kamida, so he still needed his consent. Ken Kamida looked at Hinami, then squatted in front of Hinami, then touched Hinami's head and said, "You are Hinami, right? Uncle can let you participate, but you can only watch Uncle operate obediently by the side. Can you do it?" "Yes." Hinami nodded. If it was a human child, then Kamida Ken would definitely not agree to such a request, but Hinami is a gal, so her psychological endurance is naturally much stronger than that of humans. "I want to go too, Uncle Kamida." At this time, Kirishima Taoka also interrupted and planned to accompany Hinami. Kamida Ken knew Kirishima Taoka. After all, he was in contact with Shiho Renshi most frequently, and knew that Kirishima Taoka was Shiho Renshi's niece, so Kamida Ken nodded. With Kamida Ken's consent, Kirishima Taoka grabbed Bai Yu, and then said to Bai Yu, "Bai Yu, you come too." Chapter 955, Roaring Flames. Bai Yu was pulled by Kirishima Taoka to accompany him. Bai Yu naturally couldn't refuse. After all, there was no reason to refuse in this situation. Then, the others followed Kamida Ken to his office. In Kamida Ken's office, there were many different kinds of urns. These things might be considered unlucky for humans, but for the gals, these things were actually just bottles and jars and ordinary wooden boxes. Kamida Ken brewed coffee at a small bar in a corner of the room. These coffee beans were actually given by the antiques. After all, the only thing that the gals could taste was coffee. Although Kamita Ken didn't run a coffee shop, he was very professional in brewing coffee. In about 10 minutes, he brewed coffee for everyone. Kamita Ken's men brought the coffee to Yoshimura Kausen and others one by one. Kaneki Ken and Nishio Nishiki were in this place for the first time, so it was also the first time they knew that there were gals disguising and surviving in this way. After that, Yoshimura Kausen, Shiho Renshi, Furuma Renji and Ira Mizuan started talking with Kamita Ken. The bored Kaneki Ken soon found a book by Takatsuki Izumi on the table, which made Kaneki Ken take the initiative to pick it up and read it. In this environment, Kaneki Ken, who couldn't speak, could only read quietly. On the other side, Shiraha, Kirishima Talca and Hinami followed the cremator to a crematorium. After everyone entered the crematorium, the cremator closed the door of the crematorium, and then the whole room became a closed room. People outside could not see the situation inside at all. Because they were dealing with the bodies of their companions' family members, the cremator skipped the step of removing the internal organs, and directly put Fugashima Sato and his sleeping bag into the incinerator. Wait. Just as the cremator was about to close the sealing cover of the furnace, Hinami suddenly called out to the cremator and said, "Let me take another look at my father." Hearing this, the cremator also understood Hinami's feelings, so he stopped what he was doing, pulled Fugashima Sato out, and then waited for Hinami to unzip the sleeping bag himself. The cremator didn't pull it, not because he was afraid, but because he felt that it was most meaningful to let Hinami do this. Hinami walked up, then unzipped the sleeping bag, and fiddled with the sleeping bag. After seeing her father's face, Hinami couldn't help feeling inexplicably sad, and tears suddenly came out of her eyes. Hinami didn't cry, but just shed tears silently. Seeing that Hinami had not made any movement for a long time, Bai Yu walked behind her, put his hands on her shoulders, and said, "Hina, let your father and mother reunite in heaven as soon as possible." With Bai Yu's reminder, Hinami zipped up, and the cremator pushed Fugashima Sato into the incinerator again. This time, the sealing cover was really closed in front of Hinami. "All of you step back. The temperature near the incinerator will be very high," the cremator kindly reminded. Hearing this, Bai Yu pulled Hinami and Kirishima Talca back to the wall, and then the cremator started the incinerator after confirming that everything was correct. Then the whole room was filled with the sound of the incinerator running, and the roar of the raging flames could be heard inside. Chapter 956 The Beauty that was covered in dust. This rumbling sound is the sound of the high pressure flame ejected from the incinerator, and the temperature of the room gradually rises. But even so, this temperature seems to be unable to make Hinami feel any warmth, but makes Hinami feel colder and colder. Then, Hinami couldn't help but bury her body in Bai Yu's arms. This is an action she would only do to her mother, but now she did it to Bai Yu. Perhaps it was because Bai Yu had the smell of Mrs. Ryoko, so in sadness, Hinami regarded Bai Yu as her mother and subconsciously did such a behavior. Bai Yu did not reject it, but took the initiative to pat Hinami's back, and Kirishima Talca felt an inexplicable sense of attraction on Bai Yu's body. She couldn't help but lean on Bai Yu, and then secretly held Bai Yu's arm. The whole burning process lasted for about half an hour and disappeared. After the burning was completed, the cremator took out his mobile phone and called Kamita Ken to inform him that the work here had been completed. After answering the phone, Kamita Ken hung up and said to Yoshimura Kausen, "Brother Yoshimura, Mr. Fukao's cremation has been completed. Please pick an urn here to put the ashes." Hearing this, Yoshimura Kausen stood up and went to the shelf where the urns were placed. He picked a simple wooden urn with a small depression on it for posthumous photos. After selecting the urn, Yoshimura Kausen said to everyone, "Let's go and take Fukao home." After that, everyone followed Kamita Ken to the incineration room. Originally, people would not enter the incineration room. The ashes were directly packed by the cremator, and then the urn was handed over to the family. Moreover, most people dare not enter the incineration room casually. The biggest reason is taboo, except for the brave ones. However, Yoshimura Kausen and his group are all gals, so there is nothing to be taboo about. After all, they have seen a lot of dead people. After Yoshimura Kausen and his party came to the incinerator, the cremator opened the furnace. After the furnace was opened, Fukushima Sato was gone, and what was left was the ashes that had been burned to ashes. Then Yoshimura Kousen personally put the ashes into the urn. Just when Yoshimura Kousen was about to cover the urn, Bai Yu suddenly called Yoshimura Kousen. "Wait. What's wrong?" Yoshimura Kousen asked in confusion. Then Bai Yu immediately took off his shirt. Seeing this, everyone was a little confused about what Bai Yu was going to do. Bai Yu reached out and touched the kukuri that had hardened into a bone-like bag on his back and then tore off one of the sections. Suddenly, Bai Yu screamed and blood flowed from the torn place. Bai Yu handed the torn part of the kukuri to Yoshimura Kousen and then said, "How can we let Mr. Fukuchi be alone? Let Mrs. Ryoko accompany him." Hearing this, everyone understood what Bai Yu meant, and their hearts couldn't help but feel warm. Yoshimura Kousen immediately took the small part of the Kakubeo bone that Bai Yu had torn off and then put it into the urn. Finally, the urn was covered and locked. After doing all this, Yoshimura Kousen handed the key and urn to Hinami. "Hina, you must keep this thing. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 957 Turmoil in District 11. Hinami took the urn and key handed over by Yoshimura Kousen. This box is of great significance to Hinami now. Hinami held the urn tightly in her arms. When Iramizuan saw blood flowing from Bai Yu's back, she took out a sanitary napkin from her handbag and handed it to Kirishima Taoka, saying, "Taoka-chan, use this to wipe the blood off Bai Yu's back." Kirishima Taoka looked at the sanitary napkin handed over by Iramizuan and couldn't help but look at Iramizuan with a strange look and said, "Zioxuan sister, are you sure you want to use this? Don't you have a tissue? Tissues are not as useful as this, you know." Iramizuan said, and gave Kirishima Taoka a look that said you know. In the end, Kirishima Taoka had to use the sanitary napkin to wipe the blood off Bai Yu's back. After all, sanitary napkins are very absorbent, so soon Bai Yu's back was wiped clean by Kirishima Taoka using Iramizuan's sanitary napkin. Bai Yu didn't feel anything. Anyway, it wasn't a sanitary napkin that had been used before. After handling Fukushima Sato's funeral at the crematorium, the group said goodbye to Kamida-ken and drove away. After Fukushima Sato's affairs were handled, Yoshimura Kousen gave Kaneki-ken a 5-day vacation so that Kaneki-ken could have a good rest and recover from this incident as soon as possible. Because Yoshimura Kousen could see from Kaneki-ken's performance that Kaneki-ken had not recovered from this incident, he arranged for Kaneki-ken to take a vacation. As for Shiraha, Yoshimura Kousen was not too worried about him, because Shiraha was the one that Yoshimura Kousen was less worried about. After that, Shaka and she drove Nishionashiki and Kaneki-ken back to their residence. Furuma Renji and Iramizuan did not stay in the antique shop for too long, because they were not opening the shop today, and left with Shaka and she. There were only Yoshimura Kousen, Shiraha, Kirishima Taoka and Hinami in the shop. Because of the death of her parents, Hinami lived with Taoka, and the store manager began to tidy up the room where Hinami lived with her parents before. The days after that became much more ordinary, and Hinami gradually adapted to life without her mother and father. For safety reasons, Hinami stayed in the antique coffee shop every day and never went out again. A month later, through the news from Shifen Renji, CCG had withdrawn its deployment to District 20 and evacuated all personnel from District 20. This was indeed good news for District 20, at least it would restore the previous stability. However, CCG withdrew personnel from District 20 because of a large-scale Gaol riot in District 11. This situation seemed to have nothing to do with District 20, but Yoshimura Kousen was very concerned. He thought that a large-scale Gaol riot had never happened before, and such a large scale showed that it was organized. So District 11 was just the beginning, and it might affect District 20 later. Therefore, Yoshimura Kousen planned to take Bai Yu, Shiho Renshi, Iramizuan and Furuma Renji to District 11 to check the specific situation. Only Kirishima Taoka, Kaneki-ken and Nishionashiki stayed in the store. It was also on the day when Bai Yu and his group went to District 11 that the store welcomed an uninvited guest. Chapter 958. Where is the store manager? Where is the manager? After the door of the antique coffee shop was pushed open, 4 or 5 people rushed in. The leader was a man in his 30s, who had a fierce look, a beard on his chin, and was dressed very casually. Following behind him were mysterious men wearing gas masks and sweatshirts of different colors. Kaneki-ken was frightened when he saw such a group of people breaking into the store, and he didn't dare to speak for a while. Kirishima Talca was not afraid of these people, but she didn't rush to pay attention to them or drive them away. Nishiokin, who was wiping the table, also stopped what he was doing, then pushed his glasses and looked at the group of uninvited guests. Seeing that no one was paying attention, the bearded man immediately turned to Kaneki-ken, who was closest to him, and then grabbed Kaneki-ken's collar, as if he was ready to fight at any time, and asked, "I ask you, where is your manager? Tell him to come out and see me." "Wait, don't do it. The manager is out and is not in the store now." Kaneki-ken saw that the other party was just threatening him, so he answered, "Then where did he go? Tell me." The bearded man still had no intention of letting Kaneki go, and asked, "Hey, if you have something to ask the store manager, at least order a cup of coffee first. Although the store manager is not here, we can help you tell him, and maybe we can also answer your questions. If you are here to cause trouble, don't blame me for taking action." Kirishima Talca turned around and threatened the bearded man. Hearing this, the bearded man looked at Kirishima Talca and then said with a ferocious face, "What did you say? Then give me a cup of the cheapest coffee. I'll tell you in advance, I didn't bring much money with me, so don't rip me off. Otherwise, I'll smash the store." Although the bearded man looked ferocious and fierce, he still ordered a cup of coffee according to Kirishima Talca's request, and it was the cheapest one. Seeing this, Nishiokin couldn't help but laugh, and then started to make coffee for the bearded man. After that, the bearded man sat down at a seat, and his masked younger brother stood behind him obediently, while Kirishima Talca sat opposite the bearded man. Kaneki-ken brought the coffee to the bearded man, and said, "Enjoy." After that, Kaneki-ken was about to leave, but the bearded man called him and said, "Stop, did I ask you to leave? Sit down." Hearing this, Kaneki-ken shuddered and had to sit next to Kirishima Talca obediently. Kirishima Talca looked at the bearded man with a calm face and was not scared by the bearded man. "If you have anything to ask the store manager, you can tell me now. If we can answer it, we will answer it. If we can't answer it, we will tell the store manager for you." Kirishima Talca began to interrogate the bearded man and asked. The bearded man took a sip of coffee first, then said, "It just so happens that I have something to ask you. Do you know Kamishiro Rise? My name is Manjo Shuchi. I came from District 11, and I met Miss Rise in District 11. Then why do you think Rise is here?" Kirishima Talca asked after hearing Manjo Shuchi's question. "It seems that you know Miss Rise. When Miss Rise left District 11, she was very interested in this coffee shop, so." Chapter 959. Come to make fun of. When Manjo Shuchi said this, the oscillating fan in the store suddenly turned to Kaneki-ken's direction, and the wind from the fan blew onto Kaneki-ken's body. Then Manjo Shuchi smelled the scent coming from Kaneki-ken's body, and he immediately stood up, then reached out and grabbed Kaneki-ken's collar again, and then shouted angrily, "Why do you smell like Miss Rise? Answer me." Manjo Shuchi was like a person who had been forgiven, which made Kaneki-ken a little confused about how to explain it. After all, Kaneki-ken didn't know what the relationship between Manjo Shuchi and Kamishiro Rise was. "Are you looking for trouble?" Kirishima Talca also stood up immediately, glaring at Manjo Shuchi. Those younger brothers saw that something was wrong and immediately reminded him, "Brother Manjo." Manjo Shuai then let go of Kaneki-ken, and then sat down again, sighed and said, "Are you Miss Rise's man?" Hearing this, Kaneki-ken understood and waved his hand to deny. "No, no, no. She and I haven't reached that stage yet." "What? That means we are boyfriend and girlfriend." Manjo Shuai couldn't accept it at all, and then he directly waved his fist at Kaneki-ken. Kaneki-ken immediately shrank back and sat down. "No, no. Misunderstanding." Kaneki immediately stood up and bowed to apologize. In order to attack Kaneki Ken, Manjo Shuai had already leaned over, and then Kaneki Ken bowed, and his forehead hit Manjo Shuai's back, and he fainted directly. Kirishima Talca was stunned by this scene. She didn't expect Manjo Shuai to be such a weak chicken, even weaker than Kaneki Ken. When Manjo Shuai's younger brother saw his elder brother fainted on the table, he did not intend to attack Kaneki Ken, but went forward to check on Manjo Shuai's condition. Unconscious. As expected. Sorry, our elder brother is such a weakling. Yeah. Sorry to trouble you. The four younger brothers said one by one, as if they were already accustomed to Manjo Shuai's situation. Kirishima Talca couldn't help but agree. That's right. He just came here to make fun of him. After Kirishima Talca knew that Manjo Shuai came here to make fun of him, she did not drive them to the store. After more than 10 minutes, Manjo Shuai woke up again. And Kirishima Talca no longer wanted to care about Manjo Shuai, so after Manjo Shuai woke up, she did not go forward to care about him. It was Kaneki Ken who handed a glass of water to Manjo Tsukichi after he woke up. Manjo Tsukichi did not refuse. After drinking the glass of water, he said, "You are very strong, and you are indeed qualified to be Miss Rise's man. What's your name?" "Ah. My name is Kaneki Ken." Kaneki Ken obviously did not expect Manjo Tsukichi to say this, but did he still like Kamishiro Rise? After all, Kamishiro Rise is a gluttonous woman who kills innocent people. Besides, Kamishiro Rise almost ate herself at the beginning. Otherwise someone designed Kamishiro Rise, and her end was just Kamishiro Rise's food. For such a woman, Kaneki Ken did not think that he would still like her unless Kaneki Ken could completely conquer Kamishiro Rise and make her unable to suppress him. But in Manjo's eyes, Kamishiro Rise did not seem to be an extremely bad gal. Chapter 960. One of the most kind-hearted. Mr. Manjo, I really have nothing to do with Rise. We are just book friends. Kaneki Ken said to Manjo Shuchi. Really? I'm so sorry. My behavior just now was really rude. Manjo Shuchi knelt down to Kaneki Ken. It can be said that this is a very big courtesy. This scared Kaneki Ken, but Kaneki Ken also knew that Manjo Shuchi was also a kind-hearted gal. So Kaneki Ken immediately pulled Manjo Shuchi up and said, "It's okay, it's okay. I know Mr. Manjo cares about Rise very much. Kaneki, can you tell me where Miss Rise is now? I hope to see her as soon as possible." After being pulled up by Kaneki Ken, Manjo Shuchi asked Kaneki Ken. Although Kaneki Ken is not Rise's man, Manjo Shuchi knows from Kaneki Ken's words and attitude that Kaneki Ken and Rise know each other, so he believes that Kaneki Ken will know the whereabouts of Kamishiro Rise. Kaneki Ken looked at Manjo Shuchi's eyes that were eager for his reply, and finally did not tell Manjo Shuchi the news of Kamishiro Rise's death, but said, "Rise is no longer in District 20. Hearing Kaneki Ken's answer, Manjo Shuchi was immediately very disappointed, and then sighed. "Is that so?" "That's right. Miss Rise is a very casual person. I'm sorry. Mr. Manjo, I can't help you." Kaneki Ken also said sorry, and then stood up, and prepared to help clean up the store. Because at this point, it was almost time to close the store. The sun will set completely soon, and then it will soon be dark. Wait a moment, Kaneki. Manjo Shuchi suddenly stopped Kaneki again, and said, "I have something to ask of you. If you can see Ms. Rise, please tell her to flee Tokyo as soon as possible. The fastest way is to flee abroad." Kaneki Ken, who was standing still, heard what Manjo Shuchi said, and couldn't help but not quite understand what Manjo Shuchi said. Escape from Tokyo? Why flee? 2 months ago, the Gao organization of Bronze Tree attacked District 11. After those guys made the Gals of our District 11 surrender, they have now turned their target to the White Cranes. The Gals of Bronze Tree are very strong, and now all the White Cranes in District 11 have been hunted down by them. I'm now considered as their errand boy. They are looking for Miss Rise again. The specific reason is unknown, but I think it must be a bad thing. District 11 has fallen, and District 20 will probably be their target sooner or later. I'm not exaggerating. You'd better run away as soon as possible. Otherwise, As once Hang Shuai said this, a man suddenly jumped down from the roof of the antique coffee shop and landed outside the flower bed outside the shop. Then the man immediately kicked the glass curtain wall near the window of the shop to pieces. The sudden change made Wan Hang Shuai stop talking. Just as he was about to turn his head to look at the glass curtain wall, the man who broke the glass curtain wall kicked Wan Hang Shuai on the shoulder, and Wan Hang Shuai was kicked and hit the bar. Mr. Wan Hang. Kaneki Ken couldn't help but yelled, and then looked at the man who kicked him. Chapter 961, Stinky Brother. The man was a very young teenager, about 17 or 18 years old. His hair was long and messy, and he looked handsome. He was dressed very casually, with his hands in his pockets, looking a bit like a gangster. Kaneki Ken was surprised when he saw this teenager who was not much younger than him, because Kaneki Ken felt that this teenager looked a lot like Kirishima Taoka. When Kirishima Taoka saw this teenager, her expression changed. Nishiokin also put down the coffee cup in his hand, and then pushed his glasses. The guy who came this time, from the way he appeared, was obviously a guy with a brush, but Nishiokin did not immediately go forward to fight. After all, the opponent was not kicking an antique. What are you dawdling here, Manjo? Do you want me to beat you up again, and make you vomit blood? The teenager who kicked Manjo threatened Manjo Shuchi unhappily. Uto. Manjo Shuchi seemed to be a little afraid, and called out the name of the teenager. At this time, Kirishima Taoka had already walked towards Otto. Seeing this, Manjo Tsukichi couldn't help but yelled, "Hey! Don't go over there." Kirishima Taoka ignored Manjo Tsukichi and just walked in front of Odu, looking at him with a serious and angry expression. Odu. "Hey. Long time no see. Stupid sister." Kirishima Odu didn't seem to have any intention of not recognizing her sister, but greeted Kirishima Taoka in a joking tone. When Manjo Tsukichi heard what Kirishima Odu said, he realized that Kirishima Taoka, the female employee of the coffee shop, was Odu's sister. No wonder she dared to walk in front of Odu. You actually joined a dirty organization like Bronze Tree. Look at what Bronze Tree did. Idiot. Kirishima Taoka looked like she was disappointed with her brother and immediately slapped her brother in the face. However, this slap did not successfully hit Kirishima Odu's face. Kirishima Taoka's hand was tightly caught by Kirishima Odu. "Stupid sister, you are not still thinking of bullying me like when we were little, are you? You are so naive. I joined the Bronze Tree because I'm different from you who are addicted to comfort." Kirishima Otto said to Kirishima Taoka in a very joking tone, and then shook off Kirishima Taoka's hand. Seeing her younger brother riding on her head and acting wild, Kirishima Taoka, who was already domineering and strong, became even more angry and said angrily, "You little brat, you are so arrogant, just because you joined the Bronze Tree. Stop pretending in front of me. You are the brat. Look at the reality. Stupid sister." Kirishima Otto replied with a cold tone. At this time, the door of the store was pushed open again, and a strong man in an off-white suit walked in. This man was the leader of District 13, Gecko, and also a member of the Bronze Tree. Behind the Gecko was a shemale wearing a hip skirt and stockings. When the shemale looked up from the bottom, there was nothing unusual, but when you looked at her face, it was a shocking sight. Because it was a man's face, without any feminine look. You could clearly see the stubble on his chin, after it was shaved clean, with large pores, and most importantly, short hair. Chapter 962, Gecko Visits. The only feminine thing about this ladder boy is his clothes and the lipstick on his mouth, as well as his specially made eyebrows and eyelashes, the contact lenses in his eyes and the earrings on his earlobes. It may be because of his lack of talent that this guy looks neither fish nor fowl. However, the fact that such a person can follow Gecko shows that this guy is probably quite capable. "Are you done, Otoko? Can I bother you for a moment?" Gecko interrupted politely. The ladder boy following Gecko closed the door of the store again, turned the sign that said "Open for Business" over, and hung the other side of the sign that said "Out of Business." Kirishima Otoko was not very happy about Gecko's arrival and couldn't help but sneered. Judging from Kirishima Otoko's performance, he disliked Gecko very much. However, Kirishima Otoko did not pretend in front of Gecko, and Kirishima Otoko did not immediately have any conversation with Gecko. When Nishiojin saw Gekko coming, his whole body tensed up. He had heard of Gekko's name and knew that Gekko was an extremely dangerous guy. When Manjo Shuai saw Gekko, the fear in his eyes became stronger. "Oh, I heard that you have a sister, Otto-kun. You two are really beautiful. I'm really jealous." The Shemale man looked at Kirishima Tauka, who was standing next to Kirishima Otto, and a rough low male voice came out after he opened his mouth. After saying that, the Shemale man stretched out his ring finger and licked it. When Kirishima Tauka saw this scene, her whole heart was shocked, and she was also disgusted by the Shemale man. "Why are you here too, Gekko?" Kirishima Tauka asked coldly. "I came here with Manjo. Your subordinates are really excellent," Gekko said, and then looked at Manjo Shuai. "Mr. Gekko, Miss Risui is not here." Manjo Tsukichi answered immediately, as if he wanted to send Gekko away quickly. Gekko immediately kicked Manjo Tsukichi in the face. Compared with Kirishima Otto's kick, Gekko's kick was more humiliating. "Mr. Manjo." Kaneki Ken immediately wanted to rescue Manjo Tsukichi, but Kaneki Ken was quickly stopped by Nishiokin. "Don't go over there. That guy is Gekko. It's very dangerous," Nishiokin said in a low voice in Kaneki Ken's ear. After holding Kaneki Ken, Gekko suddenly turned to Kaneki Ken at this time, then took a deep breath and said, "This place stinks." As he said that, Gekko pressed his thumb on his index finger, pressing the bone to make a crisp cracking sound. Although this is an act of self-mutilation, Gekko doesn't seem to care, and there is no change in his expression. Then, the Gekko came in front of Kaneki Ken and said with a ferocious face, "You are full of the smell I hate the most." Kaneki Ken was frightened and retreated, but there was a bar behind Kaneki Ken, and Kaneki Ken had no room to retreat at all. He could only stick to the bar tightly. "Nicole, is this guy okay?" Then the Gekko turned his head and looked at the Shemale man and asked, "It seems that this Shemale man named Nicole has a high status. What's wrong with that? Take him away quickly." The Shemale man Nicole said indifferently, without even looking at Kaneki Ken. His attention was on his nails painted with nail polish. Chapter 963 Chaotic Situation. Kirishima Tauka suddenly attacked the Gekko, rushed forward and kicked the Gekko in the head. However, the Gekko immediately raised his hand to block Kirishima Tauka's kick, so that Kirishima Tauka's kick only hit his forearm. "Take her away. Do you think this is a market? Don't do whatever you want," Kirishima Tauka said, a little unhappy, after adjusting her body shape. "Do whatever you want?" the Gekko muttered, and then the Gekko's arm suddenly swung towards Kirishima Tauka's head. After all, the Gekko's strength was there. Under the suppression of hard strength, the Gekko's speed was so fast that Kirishima Tauka had no chance to react. Kirishima Tauka was immediately hit out by the Gekko's arm as hard as an iron rod. But the Gekko's action did not stop. After hitting Kirishima Tauka's arm out, the Gekko suddenly turned around and grabbed Kaneki Ken's neck, and then lifted Kaneki Ken up. Doing whatever one wants is the right of the strong. As a strong man, I can do this. After Gekko pinched Kaneki Ken, he said this arrogantly. Kirishima Otto was completely indifferent to her sister being attacked by Gekko, and it seemed that she had no intention of helping her sister deal with Gekko. Seeing this, Nishio Kinji was also angry. "Don't be so arrogant. This is our territory." Nishio Kinji immediately flipped over and jumped out of the bar, as if he was going to fight with Gekko. Seeing that everything was in chaos, Manjo Tsukichi suddenly hugged Nishio Kinji tightly and refused to let him go. Manjo Tsukichi was not helping Gekko, but Nishio Kinji, because he knew how cruel Gekko was, and Nishio Kinji would be beaten if he went over. "Let go. Let me go." Nishio Kinji thought that Manjo Tsukichi didn't want to hinder Gekko's work, so he immediately got angry and stepped hard on Manjo Tsukichi's instep. But Manshang Shuai refused to let go, so Nishiokin had no choice but to use the monkey stealing peach technique and grabbed a handful of it fiercely. Then Manshang Shuai let go of Nishiokin. But before Nishiokin could rush forward, he was kicked to the ground by Kirishima Otto. "Do you have the right to jump around?" Kirishima Otto said coldly to Nishiokin. "You little brat. What are you so arrogant about?" Nishiokin was immediately angry and then released his tail. Gekko ignored the situation on Nishiokin's side, but pinched Kaneki Ken then walked to the side of a table and finally pressed Kaneki Ken's head heavily on the table. The round wooden table suddenly split into two, and Kaneki Ken fell to the ground. When Kirishima saw that Nishio Kenji had released his Kagun, he also immediately released his own Fusa Kagun. In the blink of an eye, Kirishima appeared behind Nishio Kenji. Then, Kirishima-Roto's Fusa Kagun turned into a crystal shape and pierced Nishio Kenji's chest. Nishio Kenji was easily knocked down by Kirishima-Roto. Although Kirishima-Roto was a few years younger than Nishio Kenji, after all, Kirishima-Roto was a bronze tree. The environment was different, so the strength was naturally very different. What's more, Nishio Kenji couldn't even beat Kirishima Taoka, let alone this Kirishima-Roto. Lie down obediently, otherwise, I will kill you. Kirishima-Roto warned Nishio Kenji. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 964 Kaneki Ken is taken away. 1. This time, Nishio Nishiki did not burst out the same strength as when he saved Takumi last time. The reason why Nishio Nishiki survived that time was entirely because Tsukiyama Shuhu did not kill him, otherwise Nishio Nishiki would have died long ago. The reason why Tsukiyama Shuhu did not kill Nishio Nishiki was because Tsukiyama Shuhu had a short relationship with Nishio Nishiki's sister before, and then the two broke up because they were not suitable. So Tsukiyama Shuhu, as the ex-boyfriend of Nishio Nishiki's sister, did not kill Nishio Nishiki. This time, he faced Kirishima-Roto. Although he is Kirishima Taoka's younger brother, he is a member of the Bronze Tree after all, so Nishio Nishiki can't guarantee that Kirishima-Roto will not kill him. However, Nishio Nishiki still shifted his attention to Kaneki Ken. I saw that the gecko gave Kaneki Ken a heavy blow on the head and then stepped heavily on Kaneki Ken's chest. This kick directly stepped on Kaneki Ken and vomited blood. At the same time, Kaneki Ken's whole body was bent and the eye mask on his face broke. Kaneki Ken also started to attack at this moment. He grabbed the gecko's ankle and tried to take the gecko's leg away from himself. Kaneki Ken roared, and as the strength of his arm continued to increase, the gecko's leg was really pulled up by Kaneki Ken. But because of Kaneki Ken's anger, the RC cells in his body became active, and the single black eye was revealed without the cover of the blindfold. Kirishima-Roto, Gecko, and the transvestite Nico were all a little surprised and astonished when they saw that Kaneki Ken only had one black eye. Kirishima-Roto had the biggest reaction. When he saw that Kaneki Ken was a one-eyed Gao, his whole expression became shocked. The reactions of Gecko and Nico were not so strong, but just a little surprised. Oh, one-eyed. After seeing Kaneki Ken's single black eye, Gecko couldn't help but take his foot back and took a few steps. Seeing that Gecko took his foot back, Kaneki Ken immediately let go of his hand, then stood up and punched Gecko. After Gecko took a few steps back, facing Kaneki Ken's simple attack, he suddenly twisted his body and went around behind Kaneki Ken. At the same time, Gecko's Kagun was released and stabbed Kaneki Ken's chest from behind. Then, Gecko retracted his Kagun and Kaneki Ken fell to the ground. Kaneki, Kirishima Taoka and Nishio Ken's hearts tightened, and they shouted at the same time. Arseholes. What do you think this place is? This is not District 11. After saying that, Kirishima Taoka, who was extremely angry, rushed up again and prepared to fight Gecko. Gecko immediately turned to face Kirishima Taoka, preparing to fight back, but at this moment, Kirishima-Roto suddenly appeared in front of Gecko and then swung his hand and punched Kirishima Taoka, who was directly hit on the bar by this punch. Kirishima-Roto shook the hand that had punched and then taunted, "You are still as weak as before. Taoka, you are as cowardly as your father. Taoka-chan." Nishio-kin couldn't help but call Kirishima Taoka again, but Nishio-kin had been injured by Kirishima-Roto, so he couldn't move for a while. Now Nishio-kin is at most of B level, so his recovery ability is naturally not that strong. Chapter 965 Kaneki Ken is taken away. 2. When Kirishima Taoka, who was lying on the ground, had her bastard brother look down on his father like this, Her anger was immediately ignited, and immediately Kirishima Tauka's eyes and feathers were all released. Father risked his life for us. What do you know, you little brat? Then, Kirishima Tauka chose to attack her brother with anger. Kirishima Tauka's feathers on one side of her shoulder slapped towards Kirishima Roto, and during the slapping process, the feathers immediately turned into a hard crystal. When Kirishima Roto faced her sister's attack, she also released her feathers without hesitation. Kirishima Roto's feathers are double-winged, and both sides are well developed, unlike her sister, who has a broken wing on one side. Of course, this broken wing does not mean that Kirishima Tauka's other half of the feathers are disabled, but that they are not fully developed, and the growth and development of the Kagoon is related to eating. As long as Kirishima Tauka's food intake meets the growth needs of the Kagoon, the broken wing on the other side can also develop into a complete feather. This is like some people have 2 scales, some have 1, and some have 3 or 4. So from the state of the wings, Kirishima Roto must be better than his sister. After all, the wings on his other side are already fully developed, and then they will grow towards the 3rd or even 4th wings. Kirishima Roto's wings immediately wrapped him up, but Kirishima Roto's wings did not become crystallized, but blocked Kirishima Tauka's crystallized wings in the form of floating gas. You are the one who doesn't understand anything, Tauka. Dad and mom are dead, they can't protect anything. They are just at the mercy of others. But I'm different from them. Gals are more advanced than humans, and I joined the bronze tree to let those rubbish understand this. After Kirishima Roto finished arguing with his sister, Kirishima Roto's wings unfolded again, forcing Kirishima Tauka back and also causing Kirishima Tauka's wings to collapse. Then, Kirishima Roto's feathers shot a large number of crystal feathers at Kirishima Tauka, and all of these crystal feathers pierced into Kirishima Tauka's body. Suddenly, Kirishima Tauka collapsed to the ground, and blood immediately flowed out from the pierced wounds. Kirishima Roto looked like he was attacking his sister, but in fact, Kirishima Roto's attacks were not fatal, but it was inevitable to get hurt and bleed. After all, in front of Gecko and Nicole, some skills must be done. And from the beginning, Kirishima Roto didn't want to hurt his sister. He was actually protecting his sister by doing this. Otherwise, if Gecko took action, the situation would not be like this. This time, Kirishima Tauka was motionless. Kirishima Roto looked at her unconscious sister and murmured again, "Don't even think about flying, if your wings haven't grown yet. Just lie on the ground like this. Little Otto looks so handsome like this." Nicole, the transvestite who had been standing near the door of the store, was fascinated by Kirishima Roto's behavior and couldn't help but twist her butt and said like a fangirl. Seeing that Tauka was motionless, Nishio Nishiki wanted to get up immediately to check the situation, but before Nishio Nishiki could stand up, Kirishima Roto stepped on her and said coldly, "Be honest." Tauka Kaneki-ken, who was pierced through the chest by the gecko, stood up despite the pain in his body. After standing up, Kaneki-ken couldn't help but want to walk towards the fallen Kirishima Tauka. The gecko turned to Kaneki-ken after hearing the news. Seeing that Kaneki-ken actually stood up, he couldn't help but get excited. This one-eyed man is still so energetic, he must be a good toy. Chapter 966 Kaneki-ken is taken away. 3. As he said that, the gecko grabbed Kaneki-ken's head with his huge palm again, and then slammed Kaneki-ken's forehead against the bar. The dull sound of the collision between the head and the hard solid bar and Kaneki-ken's scream of pain sounded at the same time. The gecko was naturally not soft-hearted. This time, Kaneki-ken's forehead was directly broken, and blood was flowing. The bridge of his nose was also bleeding from the impact. After blocking Kaneki-ken, the gecko looked at Kaneki-ken's condition again. When he found that Kaneki-ken was still awake, the gecko's abuse mentality was aroused, and then he grabbed Kaneki-ken's head again, and slammed it against another place. "How does this feel? What about this? And this?" The gecko grabbed Kaneki-ken's head, and kept blocking it in different places, like a dunk. Kaneki-ken's screams echoed in the antique coffee shop. Manjo's heart was in a knot, and his face was full of worry. When Nishio-ken saw Gecko abusing Kaneki-ken, he could no longer care about so much, and wanted to attack. Kirishima Roto felt the movement of Nishio-ken under his feet, and immediately stepped on the back of Nishio-ken's head again, and then knocked Nishio-ken unconscious. Kirishima Roto did not have abusive tendencies, so he couldn't stand Gekko's behavior and couldn't help but sneered and turned his head to the side. Kirishima knocked Nishiokin unconscious because he didn't want to see this guy go up to be abused. Finally, Kaneki Ken's screams also disappeared. Seeing this, Manjo Shuai knew that Kaneki Ken was about to collapse, so he took a deep breath and said bravely, "Lord Gekko, it's almost time for us to go back. It's almost night." Gekko had just started to get interested, and after hearing what Manjo Shuai said, he looked at Manjo Shuai with some displeasure. At this time, the shemale Nicole walked towards the gecko, then patted the gecko's shoulder and said, "Gecko, the bearded man is right, we should go back." Nicole. The gecko suddenly turned around, and then an iron sand palm stabbed into Nicole's stomach. The shemale Nicole immediately clamped her legs together and screamed, "Oh Signoi!" The white shirt of Nicole's secretary uniform was stained red with blood because of the gecko's action. However, Nicole was not angry. Instead, she held the hand that Gekko had poked into her belly and then comforted him. "Let's continue after we go back, Gekko." Gekko pulled his hand out and then thanked him. "Thanks, Nicole." After that, Gekko let go of Kaneki Ken, who was holding his other hand, and then put his arm around Nicole's waist and walked out of the antique coffee shop. Kaneki Ken collapsed on the ground like mud. "Manjo, put this one-eyed man in a sack and take it back to Area 11. We are going back," Kirishima finally instructed Manjo. After that, Kirishima took a last glance at his sister and then left the antique coffee shop through the broken glass curtain wall. This shows that Kirishima likes to be unique, and secondly, Kirishima doesn't want to get along with Gekko. Hearing this, Manjo nodded and said, "Yes." Then, Manjo Shuchi immediately came to Kaneki Ken's side and checked his life. He found that Kaneki Ken still had vital signs, and Manjo Shuchi couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although Manjo Shuchi knew that it would be very dangerous to bring Kaneki Ken back to Area 11, Gekko and Odu must be waiting for him outside, so he could only obey orders. Chapter 967 Shinohara Yukinori. CCG headquarters. Kotaro Amon and Kid Sato were temporarily suspended after the operation. During the suspension period, while Kid Sato was recovering from her injuries, she accompanied Kotaro Amon to deal with Mado's funeral. After dealing with Mado's funeral, Kotaro Amon started a devilish physical training day and night. The purpose of Kotaro Amon's devilish training was actually to make himself capable of avenging Mado. Secondly, Mado's death also made Kotaro Amon realize that he had always lived under Mado's protection. If he still stagnated like before, then the next person to die would be Kotaro Amon. Because of the riot of the Bronze Tree in District 11, Kotaro Amon and Kid Sato were transferred back to work. On this day, Kotaro Amon and Kid Sato, together with Yukinori Shinohara, who had served as their combat instructor, came to the headquarters to attend a discussion meeting on the situation in District 11. Yukinori Shinohara was also Mado's first partner. When he was young, he acted with Mado like Kotaro Amon. Mado, who could have been promoted to a special investigator, remained at the position of a senior investigator due to his personality, and was at the same level as Kotaro Amon. But Kotaro Amon's promotion to a senior investigator had a lot to do with Mado. Kotaro Amon was also aware of this, so even if they were at the same level later, Kotaro Amon still respected Mado, because Kotaro Amon also knew that Mado was not promoted to a special investigator for some reasons. Yukinori Shinohara has been a special investigator for a long time, and is the highest level investigator. The ranks of Gao investigators are ranked from the largest to the smallest, namely special, quasi-special, superior, superior, and inferior. The superior and inferior investigators have the largest number of people, and are also the ranks with the highest casualties. After all, the strength of investigators at these ranks is not too strong. There are 3 levels of superiors and subordinates. The third level of the subordinate is the lowest level, followed by the second level, the first level, the third level, the second level, the first level, and the superior level. From the superior to the quasi-special level, there is no distinction between the first and second level, but direct promotion. However, the conditions for promotion are also very strict. Only those who have made great military achievements and have a strong record can be promoted. In other words, if Amon Kotaro wants to be promoted to the quasi-special level now, it is not enough to kill a few gals casually, but he must eradicate some more prestigious gals. This is the essence of military achievements. As for the promotion from the subordinate to the superior, it is judged by the completion indicators of the work, that is, the number of tasks completed in the record. Shinohara Yukinori is a man with a strong body, but a little fat. After all, his age is there. He is in his 40s, and it is impossible for him to be like when he was young. Moreover, gaining weight is also related to physical constitution. After all, CCG has no regulations on the body shape of investigators. Because of his age, the hairline on both sides of Shinohara Yukinori's forehead also shows signs of moving up, but because there is no such situation in the middle, Shinohara Yukinori's hairline is very similar to the notch screen of a smartphone. Chapter 968 War Command. Compared to Mado, Shinohara Yukinori's mental outlook is much better. His neat crew cut makes him look very energetic, his hair is not grey, and his back is very straight. Mado, who looks like an old man, is actually about the same age as Shinohara, which shows that Mado must have experienced premature aging. Soon, Amon Kotaro and Sato Feng followed behind Shinohara Yukinori and pushed the door into a huge conference room. There were already people sitting in their seats in the conference room, and Amon Kotaro couldn't help but look around. Soon, Amon Kotaro recognized many quasi-special agents and senior investigators. Is Hirako, the former partner of Erima and others, here too? Amon Kotaro was a little surprised when he saw an investigator. Then Amon Kotaro couldn't help but look for Erima and others, but after looking around, Amon Kotaro didn't see Erima and others he was looking for. Didn't he come? Amon Kotaro couldn't help but murmured in his heart. The reason why Amon Kotaro was looking for Erima Takudani was not because he knew Erima Takudani, but because Erima Takudani was the most powerful person in CCG. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Erima was the god of CCG. Erima Takudani, whose full name was Erima Takasho, had never failed in every action since he became an investigator, even in front of those extremely strong gals. He was known as a white god of death in CCG because Erima Takasho liked to wear a white coat when fighting. At this time, Shinohara Yukinori greeted another slick-headed middle-aged man who was equally burly and of similar age. The slick-headed middle-aged man had a stern face and looked very majestic. When Amon Kotaro and Sato Feng saw this person, they both saluted respectfully and greeted him. Kuroiwa Takudani. Kuroiwa Takudani is here too. Amon Kotaro couldn't help but sigh in his heart. If you count Yukinori Shinohara, there are 2 special officers here. You should know that there are only 7 special officers in the entire CCG. After Yukinori Shinohara and Special Officer Kuroiwa exchanged a simple greeting, Yukinori Shinohara brought Kotaro, Amon and keyed Sato to their place and sat down. The door of the conference room was pushed open again, and a man with a middle-parted hair came in. This man was about the same age as Yukinori Shinohara and Kuroiwa, and was probably of the same generation. However, this man's body was not as strong as Yukinori Shinohara and Special Officer Kuroiwa. He looked relatively thin. His face was so thin that you could see the outline of the forehead bone, and the flesh on his cheeks was a little concave. This man was called Merutse, also a special investigator, but his duties were not like Erima Kisho, Yukinori Shinohara and Special Officer Kuroiwa, fighting on the front line. Merutse's duty was to command operations, that is, the identity of the commander of the war. Of course, Merutse was not just a freeloader, he also had his own strength. After all, he could not be born to be a commander. In a war of a certain scale, Merutse would serve as the commander, so his status was relatively special compared to Shinohara Yukinori. After Merutse entered the meeting room, he walked towards the podium and said seriously, "Everyone, take your seats." Involuntarily, some people who took the opportunity to reminisce about the past in the meeting sat down in their seats. Chapter 969, Suzuaya Juzo. The combat meeting for District 11 officially began after Merutse arrived. In the middle of the meeting, when Merutse was encouraging the morale and expressing his opinions in an extremely high-spirited manner, the door of the conference room was suddenly pushed open. The sound of the door being pushed open immediately distracted Merutse's speech, and also shifted everyone's attention to the direction of the door. When the door was pushed open, the person standing outside the door pushed the door with both hands and said, "Sorry, I'm Suzuha Juzo, Mr. Shinohara's errand boy. I'm late because I got lost. Please take care of me." Finally, Suzuha Juzo bowed to everyone in the conference room. This person named Suzuha Juzo is very young, only about 16 or 17 years old, with a very small figure and very fair skin. He looks like a girl, with a little cuteness, but he is actually a boy, and he graduated in the same class as Amon Katero. Because of his background, Suzuha Juzo was adopted by a gal when he was young, but in fact, he was abused during the adoption process, and his reproductive organs were smashed by the perverted gal during the adoption period, which is why Suzuha Juzo looks like a girl. After being rescued by Shinohara Yukinori, he was taken in and rescued by CCG and sent to CCG Investigator Academy for study at the right age. Shinohara Yukinori also became Suzuha Juzo's guardian. However, although Suzuha Juzo looks like a girl, he was abused by a gal when he was young, so his psychology, behavior and thinking patterns are different from normal people. He has violent tendencies and mild self-harm behaviors. For example, the red thread embroidery on Suzuha Juzo's neck and arms was sewn by Suzuha Juzo himself with needle and thread. It can be said that people who are slightly normal will not do this, and this is completely different from tattoos. Merutase stared blankly at Suzuha Juzo standing outside the door. He never thought that his speech would be interrupted by someone. Merutase was so angry that he trembled all over, but he did not curse at Suzuha Juzo, nor did he mean to kick Suzuha Juzo out. After a moment, Merutase looked at Shinohara Yukinori, as if he wanted Shinohara Yukinori to explain to him, or he wanted Shinohara Yukinori to deal with the situation himself. After all, Suzuha Juzo had spoken and said that he was Shinohara's subordinate. Shinohara Yukinori was ashamed to see Suzuha Juzo appear in this way and subconsciously covered his face. Amon Katero and Satoki were also very surprised by Suzuha Juzo's arrival, but seeing that Shinohara Yukinori had covered his face, Amon Katero and Satoki also saw that Shinohara Yukinori did not expect Suzuha Juzo's appearance and even had a headache. Shinohara Yukinori saw that Merutase was looking at him, so he stood up and bowed to everyone to apologize, saying, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Take a seat." In the end, Merutase didn't care about it anymore, but let Suzuha Juzo take a seat. "Thank you, uncle with middle parted hair." Suzuha Juzo also thanked Merutase politely, and then found a seat in the last row and sat down. When Merutase heard Suzuha Juzo call him uncle with middle parted hair, his anger suddenly surged up again, and he gritted his teeth. Chapter 970, a special case like Erima. All the information about the bronze tree will be released in a week. I will handle the media personally. This meeting ends here. Adjourn. This time, the bronze tree operation meeting lasted from nearly 5 in the afternoon to 6 in the evening, which was a very long time. As Merutase announced the adjournment of the meeting, the investigators in the meeting room stood up collectively and left the meeting room in an orderly manner. Shinohara Yukinori, Amon Katero and Satoki took the information and intelligence they had obtained and sat down in the cafeteria of the CCG headquarters. Suzuha Juzo was called to get food, so there were only 3 of them at the dining table. Sato Feng held the information of Suzuha Juzo in his hand and couldn't help but complain. "Senior Shinohara, how come Suzuha has only been promoted to the 3rd class after graduating for so long? In this encirclement and suppression operation, it seems that he is the only one who is a 3rd class senior, and the others are at least a 1st class senior. Are you sure you are not asking her to die by letting Suzuha participate in this operation?" Hearing this, Shinohara Yukinori didn't seem to be too worried about Suzuha Juzo, but said, "As long as people who can be used have been called by Meru this time, Meru probably thinks that Juzo can be useful. Anyway, Juzo was personally recommended to the game by President Kazuo. He is a special case after Erima. As for the position level, Juzo is too lazy. He has not performed many missions since entering CCG, so naturally he can't compare with you. Amankatero's mind was not on Suzuha Juzo, but he still listened to the conversation between Sato Feng and Shinohara Yukinori, but he had no intention of discussing it. Sato Feng didn't mean to look down on Suzuha Juzo, but he thought that this mission was very dangerous, and Suzuha Juzo was a freak, so who knows what would happen. And Shinohara Yukinori looked at the information in his hand, then sighed and said, alas, there is also a difficult guy on the enemy side. Is it Jason? Amonkatero couldn't help but ask, because Amonkatero was also looking at Jason's information at this time. Well, S-level, the leader of District 13. Compared to eating, this bastard prefers to torture people and then kill them. He has a strong tendency to abuse. Shinohara Yukinori said the introduction of Jason and the information. At this time, Suzuha Juzo had already beaten back the lunchbox. I'm back, everyone. It's time to eat. After Suzuha Juzo came back happily, he placed the lunchboxes on the table one by one. Suzuha Juzo didn't mean to wait for Shinohara Yukinori and Amonkatero to join him, and he opened a lunchbox and ate it first. Suzuha Juzo ordered eel rice, and it was double the amount of eel. From Suzuha Juzo's appearance, it seems that he doesn't care about the actions of District 11 at all, and he has no intention of looking at the intelligence. Shinohara Yukinori saw that Suzuha ordered double the amount of eel rice, and he suddenly had a headache, because Suzuha Juzo used his meal card to pay, and the price of eel rice is also expensive, plus Suzuha Juzo ordered a larger amount, so Shinohara Yukinori felt a little painful eating this meal. However, although the eel rice is expensive, it tastes really good. You guys eat too. Shinohara Yukinori saw Suzuha Juzo start eating directly, and he also signaled Amonkatero and Satoki to start. Anyway, in this situation, there is no need to pay attention to dining etiquette. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 971. Who made you like this? At night, Sif and Rinshi's car stopped outside the antique coffee shop, and the car turned off after it stopped. Then Fank and Gunshin got out of the co-pilot, Bai Yu, Ruji Angsuan and Gujian Yuana got out of the back seat, and Sif and Rinshi got out of the driver's seat. Then the group walked towards the store door. When Bai Yu passed by the flower stand, he couldn't help but look inside, and then saw the broken glass shards scattered on the ground and the damaged glass curtain wall. Bai Yu immediately felt something was wrong, and immediately rushed into the flower stand, and then walked into the store through the broken glass curtain wall. In the dark environment, Bai Yu could still use the light from the street outside to clearly see the mess in the store. Seeing Bai Yu running into the flower stand, others noticed the abnormality, and then they also walked into the store through the damaged glass curtain wall of the flower stand. Fank and Gunshin entered from the store door. After pushing open the door, Fank and Gunshin quickly pressed the light switch on the wall of the store door. The dark environment was lit up by the small chandeliers on the ceiling, and the situation in the store became clearer. There were a lot of bloodstains on the floor, the bar, and the tables and chairs were all damaged. However, Yoshimura Kausen's face still did not fluctuate much, as if he had expected such a result. Bai Yu was already nervous. Bai Yu was not unacceptable to this scene, but was simply worried about Kirishima Taoka. Taoka-chan and the others won't be in trouble, right? Rumizuan was also worried about Kirishima Taoka, Kaneki-ken, and Nishio-kin. At this time, Hinami came down from the second floor. When she saw that Yoshimura Kausen, Bai Yu and others who had gone out had returned, her heart was completely at ease. Hinami suddenly threw herself into Bai Yu's arms, and then said, "Brother Bai Yu, you are finally back." In the afternoon, bad guys came to the store, and Brother Kaneki was taken away by them. Sister Talca and Brother Nishio were beaten by them. It's good that Hinami is okay. It's okay. Bai Yu immediately comforted Hinami. After that, the group did not rush to clean up the mess on the first floor, but went up to the second floor. On the second floor, the group saw Kirishima Taoka and Nishio Nishiki lying on the sofa. Both of their clothes were stained with blood and they were in a relatively weak state. However, Bai Yu could feel that the life breath of the two was stable, so they were definitely not in danger of life. Bai Yu came to Kirishima Tauka, then grabbed Kirishima Tauka's hand and stroked it, and then asked, "Who made you like this?" Hearing this, Kirishima Tauka knew what Bai Yu wanted to do, and she couldn't help but feel a warm feeling in her heart, but it was her brother who hurt her. As a sister, she still didn't want Bai Yu to go to trouble her brother. So Kirishima Tauka shook her head and said, "It's okay. Manager, Kaneki was captured by the bronze tree. The bronze tree is looking for Kamishiro Rise. The specific reason is unknown." Then, Kirishima Tauka looked at Yoshimura Kausen and told him about Kaneki Ken's capture and the news she heard from Manjo Shuchi. "I already know." Yoshimura Kausen responded. "Manager, we have to save Kaneki, otherwise he will be killed by the gecko," Nishio Nishiki said with some excitement. Chapter 972 Bai Yu's Purpose. The reason why Nishio Nishiki was so excited was because he had already regarded Kaneki Ken as a family member, and he also regarded himself as a part of the antiques, and he agreed with the concept of antiques. Shihorenshi, Iramizuan and Furumarenji did not immediately express any opinions on this, and the store manager Yoshimura Kozen still had a calm face. "Before that, I hope you will be mentally prepared to never see Kaneki again," Yoshimura Kozen said very pessimistically. The reason why Yoshimura Kozen was so pessimistic was that the incident had happened for a while, and during this period of time, Yoshimura Kozen naturally did not dare to be sure whether Kaneki Ken would be killed by Bronze Tree. After all, Kaneki Ken had no direct relationship with Kamishiro Rise. He was just a victim of a conspiracy or experiment, so Yoshimura Kozen could not guarantee whether Bronze Tree would kill Kaneki Ken if it found that Kaneki Ken was worthless. When Nishio Kenji heard what the store manager said, he couldn't help but said angrily, "What do you mean by that? Are you going to turn a blind eye? Give up on Kaneki?" Because of his injury and emotional excitement, Nishio Kenji suddenly started to cough violently and gasped. Hirami immediately stepped forward to calm Nishio Kenji down and told him not to be so excited. "Manager, we will go to save Kaneki, right?" Kirishima Tauka knew that Yoshimura Kausen was not a cold-blooded person, so she asked the store manager what he meant. "The gals of the Bronze Tree are all guys who lick blood on the tip of a knife. It is not an easy task to sneak into their base to rescue Kaneki. Besides, we antiques do not have the strength to compete head-on with the Bronze Tree. If we rescue Kaneki head-on, we will face a situation of total destruction." Yoshimura Kausen analyzed the situation very rationally. "CCG will probably take action against Area 11 in the near future. We can use CCG's help to avoid direct confrontation with Bronze Tree, but it is still unknown whether Kaneki Ken can wait for our rescue. Secondly, although CCG's intervention can help us avoid direct conflict with Bronze Tree, it will also make us very likely to be intercepted by CCG. So, I think everyone here understands that rescuing Kaneki is very likely to be a one-way rescue operation." Then Yoshimura Kozen told everyone present how dangerous the matter was. "Hey, old man. You don't want to go after saying so much." Nishio-kin was a little unhappy with Yoshimura Kozen's timid words. Although these words were very correct, they made Nishio-kin feel a little too scared. "I will go," Bai Yu said very firmly at this time. Kirishima Tauka couldn't help but look at Bai Yu. After seeing Bai Yu's determined eyes, she also agreed. "I'll go too. Kaneki is a member of the antiques. We can't give up on him." "Tauka is right. I'll go too." Nishio-kin also agreed at this time. Hirami looked at the three people who expressed their opinions, and finally looked at Bai Yu, and then said, "Brother Bai Yu's choice is my choice." The reason why Bai Yu went was not to save Kaneki Ken, because Bai Yu knew that Kaneki Ken would not stay in antiques after this incident. And Kaneki Ken was not rescued by antiques, but relied on his own change of mentality to save himself. Chapter 973 Bai Yu's Show of Strength. The fundamental reason why Bai Yu went to rescue Kaneki Ken was to attack and clean up the Bronze Tree to a certain extent, and at the same time, replenish his own ghost power. Because Bai Yu had received a task from the superdimensional crossing system after inspecting Area 11, and this task was to eradicate the Bronze Tree. The reward for the task was 20% of the power of the dimensional wall. The reason why there was a 20% reward for the power of the dimensional wall was that Bai Yu was not too panicked because the bronze tree was not so easy to eradicate. The minions were naturally not the most troublesome, and the core personnel of the bronze tree were still the tricky ones. Moreover, Bai Yu also knew that it was unlikely that he could eradicate the bronze tree by himself unless Bai Yu could use the breathing method, and it was the yin and yang polar breathing method. With the blessing of the breathing method, Bai Yu could definitely kill gods and buddhas in the world of gals. After all, once the 5-element Bagua formation was used, Ghost King, Muse and Kibutsuji could not resist it, not to mention gals. Therefore, it is estimated that a long-term plan is needed to eradicate the bronze tree. Therefore, the 20% dimension wall power quest reward is also in line with the difficulty of this quest. It seems that everyone has the same idea. In order to avoid misunderstandings, I will make it clear that I was originally planning to rescue Kaneki. The purpose of the Antiques is to help each other. As a member of the Antiques, we should help Kaneki through this difficult time. But everyone's life is equally important, so I must make it clear to you about the risks. Since you have all made a decision, then I, Sifang, Gujian, and Zyuxan will all clear the way for you. In order to clear up the misunderstanding, Yoshimura Kouzen also explained. At this point, Yoshimura Kouzen changed the subject and said, in addition, I called someone to help. As he said that, Yoshimura Kouzen looked at the closed door and said, come in. Then, the door was pushed open, and the gourmet in a purple suit, Yushinzi, walked in. After standing still, he raised one hand, closed his eyes, and seemed to be speaking elegantly. Bai Yu suddenly flashed in front of Yushinzi. Kissed Tsukiyama Shu had just said one word when Bai Yu threw a heavy side punch, knocking Tsukiyama Shu over and causing him to roll over several times before falling to the ground. Everyone was shocked by Bai Yu's actions, but Kirishima Tauka and Nishio Kinki were secretly applauding in their hearts after being surprised. Because Kirishima Tauka and Nishio Kinki both had aversion and rejection towards Tsukiyama Shu. Although Tsukiyama Shu was the ex-boyfriend of Nishio Kinki's sister, Nishio Kinki still had some resentment towards Tsukiyama Shu. After all, Tsukiyama Shu wanted to kill his woman, Takumi, last time. Although Takumi was a human being, she accepted Nishio Kinki and made him feel warm. So Takumi held an extremely important position in Nishio Kinki's heart, because Nishio Kinki's sister and parents were gone, and Nishio Kinki, who was alone, only had Takumi to accompany him. Yushinzi was also stunned, but he stood up immediately. When he stood up, blood was already flowing from his nose. Yushinzi couldn't help but take out the towel on his suit belt and wiped it elegantly. Yushinzi was not familiar with Bai Yu. He could only say that he had met him several times when he came to the store before. Yushinzi had no interest in Bai Yu, so he basically didn't have much contact with Bai Yu. Therefore, Yushinzi didn't quite understand why Bai Yu suddenly attacked him. Chapter 974, Yushinzi is defeated again. The reason why Bai Yu went up to Tsukiyama Shu and hit him head on as soon as he saw him was actually to settle the score for Tsukiyama Shu's beating Tauka-chan last time. Although Tsukiyama Shu was also beaten by Kirishima Tauka that time, he had not settled the score yet. After being beaten, Tsukiyama Shu disappeared for a while and did not appear in the antique coffee shop. So Bai Yu never had the opportunity to meet Tsukiyama Shu, and Bai Yu did not take the initiative to find Tsukiyama Shu, so the score was always owed. So when Bai Yu saw Tsukiyama Shu appear in front of him at this time, he threw the bill of this account in his face without any hesitation. Tsukiyama, why are you here? Kirishima Tauka glared at Tsukiyama Shu with disgust. Nishio Nishiki also had some disgust with Tsukiyama Shu. Originally, Nishio Nishiki and Tsukiyama Shu had never interfered with each other, but after Tsukiyama Shu did that to Takumi, Nishio Nishiki had already hated Tsukiyama Shu. Tsukiyama Shu ignored Kirishima Tauka, but stared at Bai Yu, then said with a smile, nice punch. As soon as the voice fell, Tsukiyama Shu suddenly attacked Bai Yu, and Tsukiyama Shu suddenly punched Bai Yu. Although Tsukiyama Shu's level is A+, it won't be long before he reaches S level, but Bai Yu is now a half Hercule with 3 Hercules, and his strength must be at least SS level or S+. In addition, Bai Yu has seen all kinds of storms in Demon Slayer, and his combat experience is not comparable to Tsukiyamashu. So when Tsukiyamashu's fist was extended, Bai Yu had already felt it, and when Tsukiyamashu's fist was about to hit him, Bai Yu grabbed Tsukiyamashu's wrist tightly. Facing Tsukiyamashu's counter-attack, Bai Yu, who originally wanted to teach Tsukiyamashu a lesson with a punch, immediately got angry, and while grabbing Tsukiyamashu's wrist, he kicked Tsukiyamashu's stomach hard, and Tsukiyamashu was kicked directly against the wall. However, Bai Yu did not stop. Suddenly, he used his other hand to slam Yushinzi's head against the wall. The posture seemed to be no less than the way the gecko abused Kaneki Ken. There was only a muffled sound of thump, and the wall was directly cracked by Yushinzi's head. Of course, it was not the wall itself that cracked, but the lime layer on the surface. After all, the wall was not as strong as imagined. At this time, Bai Yu let go of Yushinzi, and Yushinzi lost the support of Bai Yu's arm, and collapsed to the ground. In addition to the cracks, the place where Yushinzi's head hit was also stained with blood. Bai Yu, what are you doing? Fanken Gunshin still sat in his seat, and then asked in confusion. Nothing, just teach this guy a lesson for Xiangchan. Bai Yu said lightly. Hearing this, Fanken Gunshin did not say much, but he also understood what Bai Yu did. At this time, Yushinzi slowly stood up from the ground. At this time, Yushinzi's face was already covered with blood, which looked a little creepy. However, Yushinzi did not attack Bai Yu again this time, because Yushinzi already knew how powerful Bai Yu was, and knew that he could not beat Bai Yu, so he could only give in. Yushinzi once again picked up the towel to wipe the blood off his face, and the bruise on Yushinzi's forehead healed within 7 or 8 seconds. Chapter 975 Yushanxi came to help. After all, Tsukiyamashu is not a member of the Antiques. Although he often appears in Area 20, Tsukiyamashu's hunting ground is not in Area 20, so he will not have much impact on the order of Area 20 like Kamishiro Rise. The Tsukiyama family that Tsukiyamashu belongs to is also a large family, which belongs to the upper class in human society. Therefore, as the young master of the Tsukiyama family and the future successor and manager of the Tsukiyama family, Tsukiyamashu's life is naturally chic. However, the reason why the Tsukiyamashu family was not discovered by the CCG is that they do things cleanly and never leave any tails. Moreover, humans cannot detect gals without being exposed, and even investigators cannot distinguish them with the naked eye. Even if gals have RC cells in their bodies, as long as they do not use the Kagun and let the Kagun back dormant, gals will not have RC cells in their blood, so even blood tests cannot detect them. Otherwise, humans would have used this method to screen gals long ago. So there is a reason why gals can be integrated into human society. Therefore, with Tsukiyamashu's identity, food is naturally not lacking, so the activity and recovery ability of Kakuba are much stronger than those of Kirishima Tauka and Nishio Kinshiki. So this simple bump will recover Tsukiyamashu quickly. You are not the boyfriend of Tauka-chan, the tomboy. The taste is unique. But it was Tauka-chan who started it first, and I was also injured by her. This matter should have been over long ago. You are being too unreasonable. After hearing Bai Yu's words, Tsukiyamashu couldn't help but argue with Bai Yu. Bai Yu didn't want to argue with him, but said lightly, if you feel uncomfortable, you are always here to accompany me. Anyway, I just need a sandbag. You. Tsukiyamashu was so angry at Bai Yu's arrogance that he couldn't speak because he knew that Bai Yu was indeed capable of using him as a sandbag. Tsukiyama, it seems that you want me to move around too. At this time, Shigeo Renshi stood up and began to stretch his muscles as if he was going to teach Tsukiyamashu a lesson. Judging from Shigeo Renshi's performance, it was as if he was telling Tsukiyamashu that even if Bai Yu didn't do anything, he, as his uncle, would still settle accounts with him. I surrender. I surrender. Tsukiyamashu surrendered immediately. Okay, Tsukiyama, let's just put this matter behind us. It's just right that you can formally meet each other. He is Bai Yu, Tauka-chan's boyfriend. Yoshimura Kausen didn't want Bai Yu and Tsukiyamashu to continue arguing. so he acted as a peacemaker, but it can be seen that Yoshimura Kazan still favors Bai Yu. After speaking to Tsukiyama Shu, Yoshimura Kazan looked at Bai Yu again and said, Bai Yu, Tsukiyama is here to help, so don't make things difficult for him. He has already been taught a lesson by Tauka-chan last time. Bai Yu sat back on the sofa and said lightly, anyway, I have taught him a lesson. I object. This guy must still be thinking about eating kaneki. I object to Tsukiyama joining. At this time, Kirishima Tauka objected. I object too. Nishiokin also made an objection. Tauka-chan, as for this, don't worry, I will watch him personally and not let him do anything unnecessary. Shifen Renshi looked at Tsukiyama Shu and said, Tsukiyama Shu knew that the antiques needed him very much, so he looked at Kirishima Tauka with a smug smile. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.